In 1868, one of the most powerful armies in the world marched into the mountains of Ethiopia. Their mission was clear: destroy the emperor who had dared to challenge the British Empire. At the top of a mountain fortress, a single ruler waited for them. His empire was collapsing, his allies had abandoned him, and the enemy was only hours away. But this emperor would make a decision that shocked everyone. Instead of surrendering, he chose death. Before we begin this story, I want to thank one of you. A subscriber recently asked us to make a video about Emperor Tewodros II. So today on Past Unlocked, we're unlocking the story of the warrior who rose from chaos, tried to rebuild Ethiopia, and became one of the most tragic rulers in African history. Before he became emperor, he was known as Kassa Hailu. He was born around 1818 during one of the most chaotic periods in Ethiopian history, known as the Zemene Mesafint, which means the era of prince. For nearly a century, Ethiopia technically had an emperor, but the emperor had very little real power. Instead, the country was controlled by powerful regional nobles. These nobles held titles like Ras and Dajazmach. A Ras was one of the highest noble titles in Ethiopia, similar to a duke or prince in Europe, often ruling large territories with their own armies. A Dajazmach, which literally means commander of the Gate, was a powerful military governor responsible for leading armies and protecting key regions. These nobles ruled their lands almost like independent kings. They raised their own armies, they collected tax from the people, and they constantly fought each other for control. The emperor in Gondar often became little more than a symbolic ruler, controlled by whichever noble happened to be the strongest. Different regions were dominated by different powerful families. For example, Tigray, a historic region ruled by a powerful prince. Wollo, an important region controlling trade routes. Gojam, a wealthy agricultural province west of Lake Tana. Bagameder, the region surrounding Gondar. Instead of one united empire, Ethiopia had become a land of competing warlords. For ordinary people, this meant constant wars, heavy tax, and instability. Young Kassa Hailu grew up watching this divided world, and he believed Ethiopia needed something it had lost: one strong emperor to unite the nation again. Kassa's rise to power began with war. In 1852, he fought his first major victory at the Battle of Guramba, defeating Dajazmach Goshuzoda from Gojam. But the most powerful political figure of the time was Ras Ali II, who controlled much of Ethiopia from Yaju. In 1853, Kassa defeated him at the Battle of Takusa. Another battle followed at Taisho. Hailu's remaining force were crushed, and he was forced to exile. But one final rival remained. Ras Bube Hailemariam, ruler of Tigray, commanded a powerful northern army. In 1855, at the Battle of Deraske, Kassa defeated Ras Bube. With that victory, the long era of the Zemene Mesafint came to an end. Soon after, Kassa crowned himself emperor, but he chose a new name, Tewodros II. The name came from an ancient Ethiopian prophecy which said a king named Tewodros would rise during a time of chaos and reunite Ethiopia, restoring justice and strength to the empire. By choosing this name, the new emperor was declaring something bold. He believed he was the ruler destined to restore Ethiopia's greatness. Once crowned, Emperor Tewodros II immediately began trying to transform Ethiopia. His goal was not just to rule. He wanted to rebuild the empire. First, he tried to centralize power. For centuries, regional nobles had ruled almost independently. Tewodros began removing them and replacing them with officials loyal directly to him. This created many enemies. Powerful nobles who had ruled their regions for generations suddenly saw their power disappear. Some rebuilt, others secretly worked against him. At the same time, Tewodros became obsessed with modernizing Ethiopia. He knew European armies had become extremely powerful, and he feared Ethiopia could one day be invaded. So he began building weapons inside Ethiopian cannons, firearms, military workshops. And one weapon would become legendary. One of the most fascinating symbols of Tewodros' ambition was a giant cannon called Sebastopol. The name came from the siege of Sebastopol during the Crimean War, where powerful artillery had played a major role. Tewodros wanted Ethiopia to possess similar military technology, so he ordered the construction of a massive cannon. Foreign craftsmen and missionaries helped build it. The cannon weighed several tons. Moving it through Ethiopia's mountains required hundreds of men pulling ropes, but to Tewodros, this cannon represented something bigger than a weapon. It was proof that Ethiopia could build modern technology with its own hands. To modernize Ethiopia further, Tewodros needed engineers and technical knowledge. So he wrote a letter to Queen Victoria, ruler of the powerful British Empire. In the letter, he asked for skilled workers and support, but the letter was ignored. To Tewodros, this felt like a deep insult. Frustrated and angry, he imprisoned several European missionaries and diplomats. He hoped this would force Britain to respond, and it did. But instead of diplomacy, Britain launched a military expedition. In 1868, a massive army, led by Robert Napier, marched into Ethiopia. Thousands of soldiers crossed the Ethiopian highlands. They brought artillery, engineers, and even elephants from India to transport equipment. Their destination was the mountain fortress of Magdala. By the time the British reached Magdala, Tewodros' situation had become desperate. Many regional rulers had rebelled. Some of his closest allies had abandoned him. His dream of a united and modern Ethiopia was collapsing. After the British captured Magdala, Tewodros faced one final decision. He could surrender and become a prisoner of a foreign empire, or he could die as a free emperor. For Tewodros, surrender meant humiliation, not only for himself, but for Ethiopia. So on April 13, 1868, he used a pistol that had once been gifted to him by Queen Victoria and took his own life. He chose death rather than surrender. After the emperor's death, the British army captured Magdala, but they did not leave empty-handed. Thousands of items were taken from fortress: ancient crowns, royal jewelries, sacred Christian manuscripts, church treasures, and historic artifacts. Many of these items were taken to institutions like the British Museum and the Victoria and Albert Museum. Even today, more than 150 years later, Ethiopia continues to ask for many of these artifacts to be returned. The story of Emperor Tewodros II has vision, ambition, and tragedy. A man who rose from chaos, a ruler who tried to rebuild an empire, and an emperor who refused to bow to a foreign army. His dream of a stronger Ethiopia would continue with later rulers like Menelik II, who would lead Ethiopia to victory at the Battle of Adwa. But now I want to hear from you. Do you think Tewodros was a hero, or a tragic ruler whose dream came too early? Let me know in the comments, and if there's any story from African history you want us to unlock, tell me below, because sometimes the next story Unlocked begins with your comments.